One is taking responsibility. It's important that if you want to be a leader, if you want to grow in leadership, you have to take responsibility for what you do. The second is to persist, because it's never a smooth sail. It's always a little bit of bumpy seas. The winds shift here and there. We got to somewhere close to the last item, which was the holiday party. The HR director got up to give an update there, and she said, we're planning a holiday party. The date is December 5th. I'd like to get volunteers to help me plan the holiday party. Again, 80 people in the room. Nobody raised their hand.
Paul Leon here. I wanted to take my hat off for a moment and speak directly to you, the listener or watcher of our show here at the Manager's Mic, and say thank you so much for being a consumer of the show. And I want to take our relationship a step further. When you join our newsletter at the managersmic.com website, again, that's the managersmic.com, I'm going to give you a free resource called A Selling Script to Skyrocket Sales. And my promise to you is that resource is to help you totally free evaluate your current script and see where it might need some improvement. If you want to take that relationship further and you're a business owner who wants a free sales audit of your current sales process to evaluate possible gaps and areas of improvement, and you feel I can help you, please reach out to us directly also at themanagersmic.com, and we'll set up a free 30-minute consultation, no commitment at all, just to have a relationship further where we can speak in real time. Thank you so much for being a listener and watcher of the show. And now back to the episode. What Barry does well is he broadens people's knowledge of leadership, teamwork, and influence to accelerate leadership. Currently, as the CEO of BGM Solution, he focuses on helping organizations and people reach their potential. Barry's career highlights include 29 years as a CEO of electric utility and water agency and 34 years with the trade associations. And he has a strong podcast on leadership called Leadership Career Accelerator. Today, Barry is a founding member and licensed trainer in influence and persuasion with the Cialdini Institute, where he delivers keynote speeches, workshops, leadership, teamwork, influence, persuasion, negotiation, and strategy. And it's been appeared on Forbes, Fox Business, and the New York Times. His book, Connect, How to Quickly Collaborate for Success in Business and Life, is available. If you really want to learn how to make more collaboration efforts productive, I would encourage everyone to visit his website, barrymoline.com, to buy his book or leverage other free resources he has that make it easier to connect with teammates. So if you ever struggle to connect, build rapport with teammates, he can put you on the fast track to that with a lot of his content. And I'm pretty excited to welcome you to Manager's Mic today, Barry, because part of our core topic is how to go from uncertain and anxious to clear and confident leadership.
And I'll tell you in a nutshell what they are, and we can broaden the conversation
Sure.
as we move on. I boiled it down to three parts. One is taking responsibility. It's important that if you want to be a leader, if you want to grow in leadership, you have to take responsibility for what you do. The second is to persist, because it's never a smooth sail. It's always a little bit of bumpy seas, and the winds shift here and there. You've got to persist. You've got to have grit. And the third is to develop over time, and this never stops growing or learning, is a leader's mindset, which I would boil down to one word, which is maturity, I think. It's something that develops over time, and you're constantly paying attention and learning from others, learning from books, and so on. So those are the three elements that I focused on in terms of growing as a leader.
Why is it important to you and your 30 plus years of career experience, Barry, that taking responsibility is the first one, if that's fair? Like, why is that? Why does it matter? And some of these questions might seem nuanced, but I feel like we don't do a good enough job sometime really defining what those words mean. But why does it matter more to you? Is it a talent thing? Do you see it in the frame of intelligence? Let's peel the onion around that first frame, if that's fair.
Well, a lot of people define leadership differently. And I'm going to ask you a quick question. On Amazon, how many books on leadership do you think there currently are today? Just pick a number.
I'm gonna say 9,000. Just for some reason, that's the number that came
All
to
right.
my head.
Go. All right. 9,000. It's higher. Keep going.
Okay. 45,000.
That's good.
Now I'm 4Xing here.
That's good. That was smart. 53,000. That's
Wow.
how many
Okay.
books there are that have some element of leadership. And so there's a lot. People think about leadership differently. There's obviously 53,000 different authors, or maybe some that have published a couple of times, that have different perspectives on leadership. However, there is one thread that goes between all those books, and that is the one characteristic is responsibility. Leaders take responsibility. And number one element of responsibility is just taking the responsibility to say, I want to be a leader. So it's possible to, to be in the world of work and let others take the reins. No problem. There are plenty of jobs where you don't have to be a manager, you don't have to lead other people. But if you want to move up the ranks, if you want to be a leader, if you want to engage with others, then you have to take that responsibility on to say, yes, I want to do that. I want to be a leader. And that is, that's responsibility. Now, that's the most basic element. You have to have the desire to do it. And then once you do that, when there are opportunities to lead, you have to jump in and say, I'll do that. And the language of leaders is pretty simple. It's will do. I'll do that. It's volunteering for stuff to do and raising your hand. That's what leaders do. So responsibility is a simple word, but it has that two-part meaning. Number one is you have to want to do it. And number two is that you have to then act. You have to say, I'll volunteer to do something, even if it's not something exciting, I'll get that done. You can count on me to get it done. So that's the number one element of leadership, and it's consistent across all 53,000 books that are on Amazon today.
Do you have an example in your professional experience of where you saw taking responsibility? This is a good example of taking responsibility looks like. Um, even if you don't have formal authority, let's just take it from that frame. Is there any
Yeah.
example that comes to mind? You've had a lot of workshops that you can kind of recall that helps us define this word better in the real world for the common man or woman.
Well, let me give you an example from my career where that I think is pretty appropriate. It also has a thread into how I developed as a leader. So I was working in a company, there were about 80 employees, and we had an all hands meeting. It was around September timeframe. And the leaders of the organization, the CEO and vice presidents, gave a series of updates about what was going on with the company. We got to somewhere close to the last item, which was the holiday party. The HR director got up to give an update there, and she said, "We're planning a holiday party. The date is December 5th, and I'd like to get volunteers to help me plan the holiday party." Again, 80 people in the room. Nobody raised their hand, and I looked around the room, and it was pretty quiet. Now, the HR director, her name was Arsinia, uh, her office was 2 doors down from me, and I felt kinda bad for her. And all this is happening in a matter of seconds, 10 seconds maybe 15 seconds, which is a
Yeah.
long time for nobody to be raising their hands. So, I raised my hand because I liked Arsinia, number 1, and I didn't want her to be alone in planning the holiday party. And 2 is, I thought I wasn't really into it, but I thought it'd be okay to support my friend. And then after I raised my hand, 2 other people raised their hands. So we had our committee of 4 people. Well, that's all
Oh,
fine and good. We have our first meeting a week later, and the CEO of the company, his name was Larry. Larry showed up for the meeting. And it turned out he loved the holiday party. It was just something that he was into. He came to all the planning meetings. And we had this group of now 5 people because it included Arsenio, the HR director, a few people on staff, and the CEO. And we planned a very nice holiday party. We had some games and we did some fun stuff, and Larry was into it the whole time. And even though I was so-so on the holiday party, I participated as an equal member of this little ad hoc committee. Well, it turned out that, let's see, in January, after the holiday party, one day, Larry, the CEO, walks into my office. Barry, you got a minute? And I was like, uh-oh, what did I do? Because that's your first thought, right?
Yeah.
I was 4 layers down from the CEO. Like, yeah, I got a minute. He sat down in my office and he said, I noticed on the holiday party planning committee that you participated well, you asked a lot of questions, you really moved the whole committee forward toward solutions. When we were stuck on something, you had ideas that got us unstuck. And he said, "We have a big conference every year. It's in June. At the conference, we hire big time speakers. We pay them 25, $35,000 to make a presentation.
Right.
They were people like Colin Powell, big name people." And
Right.
he said, even though there's 2,000 people in the audience, no one asks the first question. They're always timid. And it seems
Yeah.
to me like you'd be a good person to ask that first question. Would you do that? You mean
Okay.
go to the conference every year and ask the first question? He said, yeah. And of course, you'd do other things at the conference, but that would be an important responsibility. And I said, absolutely, I can do that. So,
Yeah.
one, that got me traveling around the country at that conference just to ask that first question. And of course, I did other things at the conference. So great. So I did that. But I got that role because I raised my hand to volunteer for that committee. Well, a couple years later, well, actually, it was 4 years later, um, some people, that job was in Washington, D.C. Some people
Right.
in Florida called me up and said, we have a job opening. They were
Mm.
members of our association. And we need somebody who takes initiative, somebody who stands up and isn't afraid to talk to important people. We need somebody to run our statewide trade association. Would you consider doing that? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And they brought me down for an interview and I competed against other people for the interview, but they hired me because they saw me standing up to important people and asking interesting questions, of course, to get the ball rolling at the conference. And what turned out to be just me raising my hand to volunteer for the holiday party got me to go to the conference, got me recognized. And here I was leading a statewide trade association when I didn't see a path to do that, but others
Mm.
did. And they noticed me because I raised my hand and took responsibility.
No, I love that. It's a good frame. I see a lot of data, and I'll throw you a curveball question about how younger people are actually stepping away from even desiring middle management roles. There was one data report, and I'm going to botch it. My wife and I will talk a lot at the dinner table about this. And sometimes as low as 40%, and then sometimes as high as 70% of the next generation saying, I don't want those types of responsibilities. I'm just not interested, or I'm just not desiring them. In your professional experience and raising your hand, having those opportunities and capitalizing them, why do you think so many people in the next generation, as far as the data goes, might be stepping away from even raising their hand? What is your professional perspective on that?
That's a really good question. We're just spitballing here.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I will say that when you take that responsibility, when you lead, when you're in charge of something, then you are accountable. Whatever happens it happens on your watch.
Right.
If things go good, great. And of course, when things go good, we give everyone the credit. When things don't go well, we have to lay the credit at the feet of the leader because the leader didn't do something, and therefore it didn't turn out well. Nevertheless, you are that accountable person, and
Right.
some people don't want that accountability. They don't want to be called in the evening, in the middle of the night when there's a problem. Ultimately, I would say this: that's okay. The expression is there's no traffic on the extra mile. I think leaders have to go the extra mile in what they do. I think the opportunity for leaders is is a pretty good one. If it's
Hmm.
true that people are stepping away from those responsibilities, if you want to be a leader, then the doors are open for you. You have to say to yourself, to the people around you, I want to go for that job. So there's less competition, maybe. This is, putting that kind of a person on the couch and say that it's less stressful if you're not a leader. There's definitely an element of stress. And that stress was a part of my entire life. It wasn't just shut it off after 8 hours. When I led organizations, I was responsible 24/7.
Hmm.
I was the leader 24/7. So when I'm on social media, I couldn't necessarily say what I really wanted to say. I
Hmm.
had to watch my behavior. I had to watch what photographs were taken of me, how I
Right.
partied. And that doesn't mean I couldn't have a good time, or if I wanted to have an extra adult beverage somewhere, I couldn't do that. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there was an upper limit into, um, you know, how I held myself because
Right.
I was a leader and I was always going to be a leader. And if I wanted to maintain that position, then I had to live within this, wide bubble. And some people may not want that responsibility, and I see that. And that's okay. You can still rise up in an organization to a certain point. If that's the career that you want, that's okay.
I like what you said earlier when you said the extra mile has no traffic. That resonated with me. Is that a leadership phrase that you would put in the bucket of responsibility that resonates with you? That's something that you have in your mind always saying, like, there's no extra traffic on the extra mile as like a quote or like a belief system that's driven you? Or is there any other phrases around responsibility in your framework also that you kind of have on loop in your brain as you do work and accelerate yourself to the next level of success?
Well, that is clearly number one. In fact, there were a few people my in my organizations that like to talk about leadership, and we would get together and just chat about it. And that was one of the phrases we talk about, particularly when there was a difficult job or a job that not a lot of people wanted to do. We would say, okay, let's step up and get it done. It would matter because we would get the project done, and it would matter because it would have a positive impact on the people we were serving, and it would matter because at performance evaluation time, those folks got better raises. So,
Yeah.
when people are stepping forward and doing the things that others don't want to do, then they get recognized.
It's a good jumping off point, I feel, into your second part of your framework, which is persistence, or in studying your stuff, it was persistence and practicing grit. And if I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, Barry, you define grit as prepare, act, persist to get the job done. Like it was that simple. And I also like things that are easy because, simple guy. Um, which of those three, prepare, act, persist, do typically newer leaders, emerging leaders usually neglect in your professional experience?
Yeah, good question. Actually think it's preparing is the
Hmm.
thing that folks do the least. A lot of folks are ready to act. They'll just jump in sort of off the cuff, provide their feedback, their input, but they haven't done the homework. Maybe they'll follow up once in a while, and that's good too. But a lot of folks don't take the time to prepare as well as they could. And what I mean by preparing, take for example a presentation. I'm pretty good at talking. Okay, great. I've put together a PowerPoint. And yeah, I know this thing. I wrote it. I ought to know it really well. But
Yeah.
maybe there's some data in there that I ought to know where it came from and what the message is from that data or what we can learn from that data that I haven't thought about. And
Right.
I I find that I've been caught a few times in the work that I've done and not being fully prepared, where I'll tell you about it in a second, a particular moment. Once you have that experience where you feel like you're not prepared, after that moment, I decided I'm always going to prepare. Sometimes I
Hmm.
may get caught and not know something, but that's okay. I can say I don't know and I'll find out. So what
Right.
happened was I was in that job in Florida. I was the director of the Florida Municipal Electric Association, and part of my job was standing up before the legislature and telling the legislature all about our utilities, what we did, and why we needed what we needed. And sometimes if somebody was attacking us, to defend our utilities.
Right.
And we had a hearing and we had several witnesses that were presenting to a legislative committee, and it wasn't going well. The
Hmm.
legislators knew more than our witnesses, and
Oh, wow.
we were not looking good. And I remember sitting there, and one of my members leaned over to me and said, "You know, Barry, somebody needs to stand up for us." And I thought to myself, yeah, somebody does need to stand up for us. And then within 2 seconds, it hit me. It's like, crap, that's me. I'm the one who's supposed to stand up, which I then did and and did as good as I could in that moment. But reflecting on it, I said to myself, I am never going to let that happen again. I'm going
Hmm.
to prepare. I'm going to over prepare. And if it's not needed, great. But in the process of preparing, you build your confidence. And
Right.
we can get into hairy situations or situations that might be what we feel is above our head, above our station, whatever that might be. You're dealing with, you're mid level and you're dealing with the CEO. But if you
Hmm.
know your stuff, talk about
Hmm.
what you know, and preparing gets you there. So
Right.
it's not difficult to act, but it's much more difficult to prepare. Even in something like when you say a presentation, running through the presentation, speaking it out loud, doing that a couple of times. I do that regularly when I make presentations. I'm always thinking about how do I say this properly or what's the most effective way to tell that story. And I probably would say that persisting is the second element of those three. Prepare, act, and persist. A lot of people give up easily.
Hmm.
You'd be amazed at how many opportunities aren't ready at the moment that they're talked about, but in 3 months or 6 months, hey, it's the right time. So, it's good when you're thinking about an idea, "Hey, this is something we ought to do now." And people say, "No, no, no, that'll never work." But if you
Right.
persist over time and bring up an idea again and again, then it becomes the right moment. So it's really important to continue to persist and to get a job done.
When you see people not live up to their potential, when you see people fail or give up too quickly, do you now have, since you've served a lot of people, helped a lot of teams, does it kind of go off your back? Is there a part of you that still feels like, I'll give you an example. I did a Gallup test once, and one of my top five is includer. Like, I like to include people. And I still struggle to this day that when somebody doesn't live up to their potential, like, people will tell me, like, then go jump off a hike or take a hike. Is there a part of you that just kind of accepts that reality? Do you still feel for that person? Walk me through, like, you as an empathetic leader, maybe around, if we can kind of go on that tangent, then bring it back.
So, question for you. Are you talking about somebody that is on my staff, or are you talking about a colleague from a different place in the workforce?
Let's do it with the frame on your staff because I think there's two types of leaders in business. You've got project leaders and people leaders. and they're usually not always the same. So let's do it from a staff frame, if that's fair.
Well, as a boss, it's always my responsibility to bring everybody up, no matter
Right,
where they are. Some people will naturally take the reins and do their jobs and do it well, and some people are less so.
right,
And I want everybody to be operating at least meeting the standards of their job. And
correct.
you also have to be a coach as a leader to
Right,
bring those people up. If we were a professional football team or baseball team or whatever, a professional team where people are getting paid to do that, and then they don't perform up to the standard, you just put in the sub that's behind them, and then that person gets kicked out, and then they lose their job. That's how the pros
right.
work, or at least professional sports work. But
Yeah,
in the world of work, we try to bring people up to the standard if they're not meeting the
correct.
standard. So I'll go to that person in a private meeting and say, this is where we need you to be in your job. We need you to take responsibility. We need you to get this task done. Can you do it? And then
Right.
get an answer from that person, achieve an understanding, and then let them say, yes, I can do it, or no, I can't do it. Either way, I mean, if they say no, then you're moving in the direction of separating them from their employment. Assuming they say yes, and generally they'll say yes, they're doing two things. One is they are by speaking it out loud, they are confirming internally that
Hmm,
they're going to get it done. That itself is an important motivator. And the
right.
second, they're being accountable to you, the boss. They're saying, yes, boss, I'm going to do this in the context of our jobs, our work, whatever.
Right.
Still, it's important to ask the question, will you do this? And then wait for an answer. The answer
Hmm.
being, yes, I'll do that. Because it's important to get that internal motivation going. In the world of persuasion and influence, it's called consistency. When we say we're going to do something, we tend to do it because we've just spoken it out loud. That's why it's important for managers to ask their employees, "Will you do
Yeah.
this?" and then wait for their answer.
Is that frame that you said, and correct me if I'm wrong, about being consistent and really having influence, did you really start defining that when you were going through the process of being a licensed trainer with the Caldini Institute, if I may ask?
Yes, absolutely. That is 100% true. It's not only just a general management technique, but it was really
Yeah.
the finer point was placed on it through my training in influence and persuasion. There's a particular this is very interesting, a particular study that was done with the Boy Scouts. Now, Girl Scouts sell cookies. I think it's cookie
Right.
time right now. It's time for Thin Mints. Boy Scouts sell popcorn. Okay.
Hmm.
Did you know that? Yeah,
No, actually, I've only thought of the Girl Sc I was never in Boy
yeah,
Scouts or Girl
yeah.
Scouts.
Well, they sell popcorn. So, like the Girl Scouts, they'll sell to door, but they'll also go to a grocery store, sit outside of the table, and ask people as they're coming by if they want to buy popcorn. Now, so the Boy Scouts had this script, and the script would be as people were walking up, they would say, "Would you like to buy some popcorn for the Boy
Hmm,
Scouts?" And people would focus on, "Do I want to buy popcorn?" They didn't focus on the second part for the Boy Scouts.
hmm,
Do I want to buy popcorn? I'm going in the shop. Do I want to buy popcorn? 1 in 7 bought the popcorn as
hmm.
folks were walking in. But then they flipped the script to this. They said, as people were walking up, do you support the Boy Scouts as people were walking up? And they would see Boy Scouts there in their uniforms. And people would say,
Yeah,
yeah, sure, I support the Boy Scouts. And then they'd
yeah.
say, would you help us by buying some popcorn? So
Hmm,
they got the consistency element first. Do you support the Boy Scouts? And
like that.
most everybody would say yes. And
Yeah.
sales rose to 4 in 7, okay?
Oh,
Instead
wow.
of 1 in 7, they rose to 4 in 7 bought the
Hmm,
popcorn because just immediately before asking to buy it, they said, "Yes, I support you." So
right.
so it's been studied. The point is, if we say we wanna do something, we'll more likely go ahead and do it.
It's a good frame. I didn't
Yeah.
know that story about the Boy Scouts, and I didn't. If you would have paid me $1 million and said, "Do you know what the Boy Scouts sell?" I would have lost $1 million too, because I was like, well, I would have thought they both sell cookies. Is what my assumption would have
Yeah,
been. I find you very impressive because it takes a lot of work, especially to work with the Florida Municipal. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. Association, and I grew up in Florida, follow Florida. I know Florida people can be kind of tough to influence. So my hat's off to you there. In doing the Caldini Institute, you've been a CEO, which is incredibly challenging. And I think this would be a good jumping off point to the third frame. If I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's developing a leader's mindset, correct? Which
absolutely.
I think is going to speak to you. So we've peeled the onion on responsibility. We've peeled the onion on being persistent as part of that frame. But when I say leader's mindset, it's a wide net. It's a very wide net
Yeah.
for you.
And yeah, and I would put it in the category of pretty much one word, which is maturity. It's a level of
Maturity. Okay.
maturity or wisdom. There are
Hmm.
specific elements which we'll talk about,
Yes, please.
but if I had to boil it down to one word, it's trying to do the right thing in the moment, whatever that might be. And we
Right.
don't know what that is. I'm just talking about a very general blanket definition. If
Yeah.
we look at leaders' mindset more specifically, there are a few items that I think are a part of it.
Sure.
You get the idea of what maturity is from some of these examples. So the first one is you recognize that leaders have a lot of balls in the air. They do a
Right.
lot of things. And as a leader of an organization, they're looking at every single department and trying to make sure that all the pistons are firing in that engine and
Right.
spending a half hour here and a half hour there and a half hour there. And there's a lot of things that are going on that other people don't have to know. They're just working on one piston and trying to keep that piston operating really well. So
Right.
if you have a lot of things going on, then recognize you may be a leader. You may have that. That's because that's what leaders do. If you're kind of
Hmm.
bored, and if you're only doing one thing, then you may not be. But
Hmm.
recognize that leaders have a lot of balls in there. They do a lot of tasks, and that's a vital leadership skill. There's one element of a leader's mindset that I think brings home the definition of maturity, and that is
Hmm.
that leaders can keep a secret.
Hmm.
And that's confidentiality. And that's confidentiality in every kind of situation. So if someone tells you something, you don't repeat it to anyone.
Hmm.
And that's that. Maybe in 2 weeks they want to talk about it again, you'll talk about it with them again alone. But you talk about
Right.
whatever it is that they told you with no one else. So leaders need to be a trusted confidant. And that builds up the way people see you in the organization. They see you as someone they can trust.
Hmm.
And related to that is gossip. And gossip is something that happens everywhere. And let's define
Right.
gossip. If the board of directors meets and says that they're going to freeze salaries for the next year, then and people are grumbling about that, that's not gossip because
Right.
that's the board took action and people are responding and you can be part of that.
Right.
If you say, you know, Bill Simmons is on the board and, his kids are all addicts, that's gossip. Okay. So that's
Right.
the
That's
difference.
fair.
A board
Hmm.
action is okay to whine and whatever, but talking about someone specifically, that's gossip. Now, it's difficult to go to people who are talking about someone
Right.
in a gossipy kind of way and say, hey, that's gossip. I don't gossip. You shouldn't be doing that. We don't want to do that because
Right.
then that excludes you from future conversations. Gossip is a tough issue. But
Right.
there's 2 things that you can do. One, as an individual, you can walk away. You can just not be part of it. It's not even, "Hey, I don't gossip. I'm out of here." It's just you try to change the subject, or if you
Right.
can't change the subject, you just slink away and don't participate in that conversation. And the
Okay.
second way to address gossip is if you have a leadership role or if you're not a leader, then go to your leader, go to your manager and say, "Hey, can we talk at our next meeting about this issue of gossip and talk about what kind of group we want to have?" Because
Mm,
there's a lot of gossip going on. And I think it would be good for us to just have a conversation about it and ask, do we want to be the
right.
kind of group that talks behind people's backs? Or do we want to be the kind of folks that talk directly to each other and just have that conversation? And I was working in an organization where there was a lot of gossip going on. And that's what we
Mm,
did. We convened a meeting where we said, "Hey, I'm going to put this on the table. There's a lot of gossip going on. People are talking behind each other's back. Is this what we
mm,
wanna do? Is this the kind of organization we wanna have?" And I let people talk. Of course,
mm,
they said, "No, we don't wanna do that." And then there were some other ideas that they had about the kind of organization they wanted. So we put up sort of a list of 10 commandments. There weren't 10, but,
yeah,
w
I'm with you.
ways that we wanted to be in our organization. We put that list in everybody's office. So it was a constant reminder about who we are. And I remember because one person felt really strongly about saying please and thank you. They just wanted those special words to be used when we
Hmm,
are asking for something to be done. And they were kind of a prim and proper kind of person, and that just meant a lot to them. And there were others
right.
in our group that were like, no, we just need to get right to the heart of it. I don't want to bother with that please and thank you stuff. And it was kind of weird. We kind of like almost duked it out on the pleases and thank you.
Right.
And in the end, I just stepped in. I said, "We're going to do it. We're going to do our best job to say please and thank you when we can. Everybody, let's try to do that because it makes sense."
Mm,
But the point
of
is,
course.
that was part of the thing that was on the wall. Ultimately, that's a good idea. And so, what we talked about so far, keeping a secret, not gossiping, you can see how those are elements of maturity. And that maturity leads to what we call that leader's mindset.
Well, I'll tell you what my comes through my mind when I hear, and this is all very valuable content, and thank you again for sharing this with me, Barry. I feel like the importance of not gossiping
Mhm.
and doing what you did to have those 10 commandments, like even though it wasn't 10, is it's important to eliminate that because adversity is going to happen, period. And you got to stay calm in adversity. What is the kind of composure, and we'll frame it from this way. I think this will make sense. Once we avoid gossip, my assumption is we'll get rid of the adversity, or at least we'll reduce it. What type of culture does that create and in your experience, did you feel you got rid of the gossip to create a culture where people could stay calm when the adversity would happen again because you set those guardrails? You said this is the boundary. Um, and my assumption is some people had to go because they weren't on board.
There's a couple things there. One is the second one was something about letting people go and those kind of situations, which we'll get to because I think that's an important topic. The first one about being calm in adversity, and I think it boils down to we can't control what happens to us because stuff is happening all around us every day, but we can control our response to it. So if something happens, well, if something's on fire, you just got to go for the bucket of water or the fire extinguisher to
Yeah,
try to put it out. I
right.
mean, if things are crazy, let's just deal with that one issue.
Correct.
Nevertheless, if there's an emergency and you've got a minute, it's important to be able to take a breath and say, "Okay, what's going on? We got to think fast. We got to focus. Let's try to figure this out." So that's what I mean about being calm in adversity.
No, that's
I
fair.
working in Florida and working in the electric utility industry, I was in charge of the state's response after hurricanes. So
Oh,
talk
wow.
about an adverse situation when a
Yeah,
hurricane would come through Florida, and Florida gets hurricanes fairly regularly.
yeah.
When you put on the Weather Channel or you saw the national news and you saw those trucks driving into Florida, lines and lines of trucks, I was the one who put those trucks on the road to bring them into Florida to help restore power after the hurricane.
Oh, really?
And yeah, and the um, I don't know, it was 2007 actually. We had 4 hurricanes go through the state one right after the other. And I remember
Yeah.
when the first hurricane hit, we had not had a hurricane in the state since 1999. So that was 8 years.
Yeah. I
And
think I
we just
remember
were
this.
complacent. We just didn't remember really well how to respond in a hurricane. And
Right.
I think it was Hurricane Charlie that went from sort of like Tampa, Orlando, and then
Yeah.
out through Daytona.
That was a crazy one.
It was a very strong hurricane that passed through the state and demolished everything in its place. And the utilities and trying to help each other, we were like Keystone Cops. We were just not good at trying to figure things out. And it literally took 2 weeks for us to restore power. Jeb Bush was governor at the time. After it happened, he got us utility leaders together, just a handful of us, and said, "Look, I'm not going to whine at you and tell you you're terrible. Things didn't go well. We have to
Right.
figure this out so that it doesn't happen again, that we can restore power faster. So let's figure it out. Let's start talking about it right now." And a group
Yeah.
of 5 people sitting around a table with the governor brainstormed to say, we need to work better together. We need to
Yeah.
share each other's phone numbers. We need to, we need to come up with systems to do this. And that's what we did. So
Right.
hurricanes after that got better and better in terms of, we got faster and faster at restoring power until today. We tell people expect to be out of power for 3 days, but within
Hmm.
3 days, we'll have 95% of the power back on. And that's because we've set up the systems and we train for people to do that. So what happened originally was like, oh no, we don't know what to do. Now we know exactly what to do. So a hurricane's coming, we say, okay, let me get out the manual. Let me figure out what the first step is. Let me figure out who to call. Okay, I've got all those lists. Let's assign responsibilities to different people. You take these 5 folks, and you take these 5 folks, and you take these 5 folks. And then we're just going to work on this like a conveyor belt. And if something
Right.
pops up, we'll talk about it and then we'll address it, but we're going to do it
Right.
together. Now it works really well. And that's what I mean about being calm in adversity is stepping back, evaluating the situation and saying, okay, nothing's on fire. No one's going to get hurt. Let's try to figure this out together. Let's ask the right
Right.
questions and let's develop a solution together, but let's develop it quick.
Hmm.
Now, you asked another question, which was also about what if somebody's not on the team? What if they're not performing? Is that more or less what you were saying?
Pretty
When you have
much.
to,
You got it.
yeah. Yeah. And ultimately it comes down to patterns over time. So if
Hmm.
somebody is not performing, you have to have a private conversation with them. This is the
Fair enough.
standard and you're not meeting the standard. You're down here and the standard's up here. Can you do this? And they say, "Yes, I can do this." Okay? We have to get that confirmation from them because if they say no, you can say, "Well, then you can't work here if you can't do that."
Hmm.
But if they say they can do that, then you work on it with them and you check in with them for, you do this every week, but you do it for a period of a month. And you say, we're going to evaluate this in a month, but every week we're going to check in. And then you work with them, coach them to try to get them up to the standard to make sure that they're performing. And if they perform, if they get on track, then that's great. And if they don't, at the end of that 4 week period, say things aren't working out, why
Hmm.
don't we move you toward not working here because you've got to meet the standard in order to continue to work here. It's different in every situation, but bottom line is that's the general process. And you want it to be above board, everybody on the table where the issue is front and center. They know what they have to do. And if they can do it, great. And if they can't do it, that's okay too. They just need to find another place or maybe another type of a job that where they'd be happier.
Or I like what you said that one word to define leadership was maturity. And in talking about storms and talking about everything up to this point, if we peel the onion around the word maturity more, Barry, do you feel maturity comes from somebody who has been through a lot of storms or is just somebody who's of age? If you wanted to define maturity more and everything you have, would it be somebody who's seen a lot of storms? See what I did there? Being clever. Or somebody who's more just seasoned with age? So they've been through a lot. or seen a lot. Maybe we could peel the onion around that term a little more. Like maybe there's other habits you want to discuss, like don't be sarcastic could be one as an example.
Yeah. Well, the answer is it's not age. It's definitely not age.
Okay.
It's all about looking around you, seeing what other mature leaders do, and
Hmm.
then mimicking them. Leaders have to keep learning their entire lives. If just at the most basic level, if somebody asks you a question and you don't know the answer, don't BS them. Just say,
Right.
I don't know, but I'll find out. And that's the way to handle those kind of situations. Even if you're
Right.
making a presentation and they ask you a difficult question, there's two ways to answer it. I don't know and I'll find out. Or, hey, let's work on that right now. Let's try to figure that out together. Let's use, all of our collective brains to try to answer that question. Who has some input for answering that? So you can actually workshop, an answer. But still, the point is leaders keep learning. When you say, I don't know and I'll find out, you're going to do some research and find out. And
Right.
leaders continuously educate themselves. So when I became a CEO at age 39, which was a little young for a
Yeah.
leader, but not
Sure. Yeah.
terribly young. But still, I was on the young side, and I knew that it was the young side. Um,
Mm,
and I committed myself to continuous education on
mm,
leadership, on the topics that were in front of me, and basically, when we're doing our jobs, we think we know the general skills that have to be done. We think we know our general background. I'm an engineer, so
yeah.
I think about things in equations. Ultimately, the topic keeps changing. We didn't think about
Yeah.
artificial intelligence 10 years ago. It wasn't an
Yeah.
issue, but it is today. It's so much of an issue today that everyone has to deal with it. Use it
Yeah.
in some way, figure out how it's going to weave into their organizations, whatever that might be. And you have to educate yourself on it. And if you say, you know, hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil, I'm just going to
Right.
ignore that. Well, you're going to
Yeah.
fall behind and that's going to impact your job and maybe your
Mm,
organization as well. You have to stay on
right.
it. You have to get educated on it. You have to figure out how you're going to use it in the organization. So the topics keep changing. The
Right.
opportunities to educate yourself, whether it's on the topics of the day or leadership skills in general by picking up a book,
Yeah.
those are opportunities that you can take every single day.
If someone wants to start today, they're listening to this podcast. I have a two-part for you. I'm going to challenge you on one thing as I ask you this question, Barry. So again, I'll repeat the question. If someone listening wants to start leveling up their leadership skills or powering up those people management skills, using your framework, using everything you do, what would you say to that person? And then the second part of this question is what is a 2026 goal you're doing, Barry, to improve your education and skills as well? Because even though I feel you hit the box in maturity, very strong skills and success, I feel like you're constantly working on yourself. So again, someone listening, what should they do today? And what's Barry doing in 2026 to continue and educate himself? So it's not you talking at someone, it's you talking with someone, if that's fair.
Good questions.
Yeah.
Since we were just talking about educating yourself, I think
Yeah.
that's the number one action that everyone should be doing. If you're
Right.
listening to this podcast, obviously your listeners are listening right now and they need to commit to continuing to listen to your podcast or find other podcasts that might help with their education. We talked about my podcast, Leadership Career Accelerator.
Yeah.
There are other management leadership type podcasts. A lot of times podcasts will interview people who have written books or interview famous people to follow their path, whatever it might be. Pick up
Right.
nuggets along the way and educate yourself. Obviously, we talked about books. Look at places like LinkedIn Learning that you can
Mm,
subscribe to. And there's a zillion courses on LinkedIn Learning. I was just on a LinkedIn Learning class yesterday
mm,
looking at some things about strategic plans. I was curious about the elements of strategic planning and I wanted to see what some folks had to say about it. Looking at
yeah.
TED Talks, which are both entertaining and educational. And the point
Right.
is, that puts you in the mindset where you never know, one, what you're going to learn, and two, how you're going to apply it, because you're going to apply it after you hear it.
Mm,
It's going to become part of your fabric. So
right,
that's the number one thing that I would do is get on that continuous learning treadmill and look everywhere for opportunities, as well as for people. Look at people around you, live people who are leaders, and watch them, watch how they present, watch how they
right.
hold themselves, watch how they interact with people. So that's important. Your second question is, what is one thing that Barry is going to do in 2026? My action word for 2026 is promo. Okay. And
Promo.
promo. And there's a reason why. And that is, I've been teaching leadership. I've written about teamwork and leadership. I've got a podcast, the book.
Right.
I've got a Substack, but I haven't been really aggressive. Aggressive isn't the right word. Assertive, I guess I'd say,
Yeah.
in promoting those things, getting them out so people see them. A few months ago, a colleague of mine and I were talking about this, and I was saying that I hadn't done a lot of that, but it's something that I probably should do. And they said
Mhm,
to me this: why are you depriving the world of your thoughts and your skills? And I was like,
mm.
whoa. I mean, they were like,
Yeah,
they were complaining to me. You're,
but it cares
you
about
know,
you, yeah.
yeah, you've got these skills, you've got these ideas, you can help other people, but you're not doing it. Well, I said, I am doing it. Yeah, but you're not promoting it. Like, whoa. So I decided that I'm going to do a better job of promoting those things that I'm working on, with the intention not for Barry to be better known, but for the ideas to reach more people.
I like that. That's very, very powerful. So I was studying a lot of your content, Barry, and what I like about you in studying your LinkedIn and your content, your book Connect was it's about I feel like empowering a lot of people. Let's peel the onion around what that means to you when we say empowering a lot of people.
The most encouraging thing that a manager can say to somebody that they work with, or for a parent to say to a child, or for a colleague to say to another colleague that they're working with, is, I believe in you. It's so motivational when somebody says, you have skills and you're good at those skills, and I believe that you can apply those skills here. We don't hear that enough. Just knowing that I believe in you is the most motivational phrase you could possibly say. Use it. Use it with everyone you possibly can. When they need to produce something, talk about it. They agree they're going to do it, and then say, I know you can do this. I believe that you can do this. You have the skills to do this. Let's go do this. Just saying those four words, I believe in you, is just incredibly motivational. And it's really valuable to say it. Sometimes it might feel like it's I don't know, cheesy or something, or
Right.
like a football coach, Vince Lombardi might say it, let's go
Yeah.
kill the other team, whatever. No, it's not. People don't say it that much. So when you say that, it's really, really valuable. And that leads into what I think is an important value of leaders in general, which is just general positivity. I think it's possible for a leader to be a jerk and succeed as a leader. But generally, people who are jerks do not rise. They may rise up, but they don't last long. It's
Right.
really important to bring others along with you on your journey. And the way to do that is to bring others up on a tough day. Don't be cynical. Talk about what you do,
Hmm.
which is part of your culture, and how it connects to the broader world, how you help the world be a better world. We are all working to make a better world. It's important for the leader, whether you're leading a group whether you're a spoke in the wheel of the organization and you support the rest of the organization, if you're working in IT, you are keeping that organization afloat because everybody is connected through IT. And people need to know that just fixing one computer is not just fixing one computer, it's keeping
Right.
everyone connected. We all have important elements of what we do, and a leader reminds people of what they do. Or a leader reminds people, hey, when they completed a job, you did a good job on that. Way to go. Be the person that tells others, yeah, you did a nice job. I appreciate that.